into for the past 20 odd years, trying to figure out how all of us make decisions and form memories and the choices we make and how we talk to each other. I even wrote a book about it. But today, this really isn't about me. This is about some amazing friends that we've brought along. I'd like you all to meet Amy and Matt and Ariel, some venture investors that I cherish, and I think you're really going to enjoy meeting. I'd love to introduce Matt. Matt, would you say hello to our friends today?
Thanks, Scott. Hey, everybody. My name is Matt Harris. I work for Draper Associates. My boss is this crazy and awesome guy named Tim Draper. We're a frontier technology firm, and we typically invest in the seed round. We typically like to lead deals. We don't have to, so we're just kind of scouring the planet for the next big thing. It's really fun, and regardless of what my brain says today, it's important for you to know that my heart says that founders are superheroes, and myself and Amy and Ariel, at least we exist to help you succeed and to serve you. So please reach out, matt@draper.vc, if we can help in any way.
I love that. Thank you, Matt. Ariel, hello. How are you doing today?
Hi, how's it going? Thanks, Matt, and very well said. Thank you, Scott. So I'm a partner at Brainstorm Ventures. We're an early stage venture capital firm based in San Francisco. We're generalists, but we invest both in the United States and in Mexico. So that's something a little bit unique about us. We were fortunately first institutional investors in a bunch of interesting companies like OpenTable, like Zappos, Keo Networks in Mexico, Turing, and Immersion more recently. So thanks for having me.
Ariel, great to have you here. And Amy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me along for this exciting opportunity. I'm Amy Cruz. I'm a general partner at Prime Movers Lab. We are a deep tech venture firm, and we invest in breakthrough science that has the potential to impact billions of lives. Our thesis is quite broad. We invest in manufacturing, transportation, infrastructure, energy, agriculture, and my favorite, human augmentation. I'm a neuroscientist by training, but cover most of the life sciences portfolio at the fund. We invest across all stages right now, so everything from seed to growth, and really excited to hear the presentations today and participate with Ariel and Matt in this experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, what you didn't mention is that I guess it was 12, maybe 15 years ago, you were actually at DARPA when we were doing our original research there.
Yes.
It's amazing to see your face, and we're really happy to have you here.
Yeah, well, happy to see how neurotechnology is getting out into the world. That's part of what my goal is. So thank you for making it happen.
I love it. All right. So just to set the frame, I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do today and what we're going to see, and then we're going to switch to some amazing startup founders. So here's how this works. Right now, our venture friends are having this experience with us. Their brain is responding every second to what's going on around them, and we're actually measuring their brain with an Apple Watch. That data is being sent to the cloud, and we're doing all sorts of magical science, and we're going to show it directly on the screen once these startup pitches are done. And if it all goes well, it's going to blow your mind. That's the hope. That's the dream. Are you ready to go? All right, let's make it happen. Our very first startup is Nurillavoice. And Sebastian, we are really excited to hear what you're working on these days. We think it's related in interesting ways to what Immersion works on every day. And I know our venture investors and all of our listeners and viewers today are going to love hearing about it. I'm going to hand the controls over to you, and off we go.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you everybody for putting this amazing event today. I am Sebastian, the founder and CEO of Nurillavoice, and we do speech analytics for face-to-face conversations in offline sales and service. So I want everybody to take a step back and think of the last time that you went shopping. Nope, not like this, like that. You probably talked to someone like Charles here, right? Charles asked you what you needed. You said you were looking for the new Superfly 1000 sneakers. And he said he didn't have any. So you thanked him and you left. Now, in that very short but very typical conversation, Charles found out very important pieces of information about you. He found out who you were, why you were in the store in the first place, what specific product you were looking for, and how was your experience. Now, brands like Verizon, Sephora, Anheuser-Busch, they're spending hundreds of millions each on social media analytics, online surveys, and call center analytics, all to try to understand their customers better. But the problem is that 90% of the interactions their customers have with their brands are not happening online. They're happening offline, face-to-face, on the field with people like Charles. And Charles is having hundreds of these conversations every day, thousands every week, where he's getting to understand their customers much, much better. And it's not only Charles. It's the telco rep who helps you buy your new iPhone. It's the car dealer who helps you sign up for your new car loan. It's the CPG rep who goes door to door talking to store managers to try to get more of his products on the shelf. It's the tens of millions of frontline sales and service reps who are having billions upon billions of face-to-face conversations with customers every single month. That's data that's comparable to the amount of Google searches. But right now, there's no way to capture it. But what if there was a way that businesses could hear what Charles is hearing, that they could understand their customers the way he does? As you might have surmised, there is a way. Introducing Rilla, the first speech analytics for offline sales and service. Here's how it works. Step one, frontline sales reps talk with customers face-to-face like they normally do. Step two, from their tablets and smartphones that they already use as part of their jobs, our mobile app records their conversation seamlessly. And step three, our proprietary AI cleans up the audio, it transcribes it into text, and uses natural language processing to analyze it and help them improve their sales and their service. Now, what do we mean by helping them improve their sales and service? This is something that Amy and Scott are gonna like a lot, because it's finding what the top performing reps are saying specifically and how they're talking, so companies can replicate those successful conversational patterns across their entire organization, so they can improve their customer experience and everything else. Now, I know what everybody might be thinking right now. Is this even legal? Yes, not only is our technology compliant with the most stringent privacy regulations in the world, but customers are actually okay with it. Don't take it from me, take it from any one of the companies that have already launched this on the field and in their stores. Since launching our product, we went from $150 in monthly revenue in May to more than $19,000 in monthly revenue that we did last month, with 2 Fortune 500 companies on active deployments and more than $1 million of ARR on the line at full deployment of our existing contracts. It's growing fast. And the reason is that our customers are finding massive value in our product. Before Rilla, they used to spend millions in time, money, and resources on these outdated, manual field supervision processes where they had to have human beings visiting stores and fields service appointments, and it was very slow. With Rilla, they're capturing 2,000 times more customer experience and sales conversational data, 100 times faster at a fraction of the cost. And this massive increase in sales visibility is allowing our customer only in months to improve their sales by more than 50%. Just massive value, faster, cheaper, better. And the best part about all of this is that it hasn't been hard for us to find these customers. Our entire pipeline of Fortune 500 customers, which is growing every week, has found us inbound. We've never reached out to them because they have already been trying to do this in their stores. But it's incredibly difficult to process in-person audio with noisy speakers where multiple people are talking into the same microphone. And Rilla is the only game in town right now. So we are the best people in the world positioned to capitalize on this massive opportunity of bringing the power of speech analytics from the call center to the real world. A massive vision that requires an amazing team to go after it. I myself am a Forbes 1000 CEO, and my co-founder, Michael, our chief data scientist, well, he's been doing signal processing his entire professional life. Right before joining Rilla, he was working for a DoD contractor using signal processing to detect objects from sonar. So yes, we have an amazing team and an amazing vision that we're going after, but we also need support from incredible investors. And that is why we're here today, because we want your help in bringing the power of speech analytics to the real world where we all live and do commerce. Thank you guys for listening, and happy to answer any questions.
Sebastian, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Let's grab a couple of questions. Matt, I see you unmuted. Do you want to start?
Sure, that was awesome. Great work. And you may have said this, but what is the business model? Is it a SaaS product, or how are you charging your customers?
Price per salesperson per month, a recording license. So however many salespeople you increase, it's up between $30 and $50 and $100 per license per month, depending on the usage of the salesperson.
And so how many customers is that if you made 90,000 last month?
19,000. So we have 8 mid-market customers, 2 Fortune 500s, and the 8 mid-market customers are at the early stages of the deployment. The average contract size at full deployment of those early mid-market customers is around $52,000 in ARR. But they're only launching with like 20 salespeople each. They each have like more than 150 or 350 each.
Got it. And you hit on one of my big questions, was like, once you get the data in, how does that turn into something that helps the company? You said you compare it to the top salesperson. Would that be for a medium or big company where there's like several locations? Would you be comparing it to the top salesperson, in the whole business, or in the store, or both? And what if all the salespeople are bad?
Yeah. So what you actually do, you do 2 things. You look at the successful conversations themselves and look for patterns there. And then you look for general patterns that that consistent top performers do. And you can do it, actually, our customers do it both ways. You look at the filters by location, by region, and also by the entire organization. And you're usually going to have salespeople who are better than others, who have a 30% conversion rate versus like the new reps who have like maybe like a 5% or 10% conversion rate. And that gap in opportunity, that's how much you can improve the entire organization.
Can that best salesperson, can you tie, are they consistent to the point that like you can tie everything they do to their total performance, or is it tying, this conversation converted to sales, or how specific is it?
Yeah, so you tie specific conversations for the top reps, and we tell top reps like, hey, here, and your successful conversations where you got success because you either made a sale or made an op sale or whatever the success metric is, here's what you did differently in those conversations versus the one that you didn't have success. So even the top reps get to learn from their mistakes and their successes.
And how does it tell if a sale resulted from a conversation?
You connect, there's 2 ways to do it, actually. One is you connect directly to the point of sale systems or the CRMs, and you tie the conversation back to it using, we use a lot of methods to do that. And the other one is we actually have a way now of actually determining if the conversation was successful using natural language processing.
Cool.
Amy, how about you? Any questions, Amy?
Yeah, I was just curious about sort of the metrics themselves. Obviously, there's a conversation, there's an outcome. Can you say a little bit more about the granularity inside of the conversation? I mean, are you looking at words, tone, pitch? Like what are you looking at?
So all of those things. So what you said, tone, pitch, how fast do you talk? I analyzed myself with Rilla, and Rilla was like, hey, you speak like with 100 words a minute, man. You need to slow down. but yeah, it's both what you're saying and how you're saying it. So I'll give you an analysis that we did for a field sales company recently. The success metric was the sales reps that are able to get over that first minute of talking to the customer door to door, because they get the door shut always in the first minute. And we saw that the successful sales reps, they mentioned 5 key topics of conversation. One was the cheaper price, flexibility of contracts, and the other one was that they're just there to schedule a meeting, not to sell anything. And then we saw salespeople who were consistently failing at that stage saying, starting with the pitch, do you have any problems with your service? And most customers, I don't have any problem. And then you can look at not only if you mentioned a topic, but how long did you spend on a topic? So we saw that greeting the customer didn't make a difference, but how long you spent on the greeting made a massive difference. The successful reps were spending 25 seconds and more. The unsuccessful reps were only spending like 5 seconds on the greeting. So it can get really granular.
I'm gonna keep rolling. This is fascinating. Sebastian, thank you so much.
Feel free to reach out to me here in this email. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm sure you'll have a lot of people reaching out. Hey, one last quick thing. If you're collecting all this data, do you get the ability to look at the data across customers, or is it always in silos?
Silo, privacy, GDPR. Yeah.
Okay, that makes tons of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian. Let's switch over to our second startup founder, the amazing Vanessa from Atomos. Vanessa, how are you today? Welcome.
Hello, doing well.
I'm going to hand control to you and just have you jump right in. We're super excited to learn more about what you're working on right now.
Okay, great. Rockets were created for military use. They were designed for a single satellite with little consideration for cost. And now, 75 years on, we still rely on these same single-use rockets to put thousands of satellites into space. This is for telecommunications, navigation, business intelligence. But due to the limits of engineering, these expensive rockets are often underused. When a satellite operator must buy an entire $90 million rocket for launch, wasted launch capacity means wasting millions of dollars. Additionally, launching satellites one at a time means that launch becomes a schedule bottleneck. Wait times can exceed years. It is expensive. It's inefficient. It's like flying passengers one at a time in a single-use Boeing 737. It does not need to be this way. At Atomos, we are building and operating orbital transfer vehicles, OTVs. OTVs are transportation vehicles that are the connecting flights for space. Rockets no longer need to go all the way to the specific orbit for a specific satellite. With OTVs, rockets can launch all satellites to a single drop-off point, and we'll take them from there. So let's dive into this. Atomos' customers, predominantly telecommunications providers, launch on any rocket to an accessible orbit, like they do today, but now satellites going to different destinations can ride share, something never before possible. We rendezvous with our customers in space and take them to their final destination before our OTV returns for more satellites. This does three things. It lowers the cost to get to orbit. It decreases the time it takes satellites to get to space and to their final orbit. And it increases the number of orbits that can be reached with a single rocket. And this is all made possible by our electric propulsion technology, which is 10 times more efficient than traditional chemical propulsion. In 2022, we'll send our first 2 OTVs to space. With our incremental approach and initial use of off-the-shelf technology, our costs are a fraction of those required by a traditional rocket startup to get up and running. And we're launching our systems next year, and they'll immediately start serving customers, generating revenue and providing value. I'm excited to say that we have won multiple grants and contracts totaling around $2 million from customers including NASA and the US Air Force. Our team of 20 experienced space professionals know our customers and they know how to build spacecraft. We've done hard things before. We've managed assets and programs larger than $500 million in value. We've led rocket engine development for NASA. And we also created the rendezvous systems for SpaceX's Dragon capsule so it could rendezvous with the ISS, a critical operation for us to master in our services. Combined, we've built and launched more than 60 spacecraft. OTVs are inevitable. Ground-based communications will simply be insufficient for our future data needs. More satellites are expected to be launched in the next few years than in all of human history. 7 years ago, my manager tasked me with reducing the cost of access to space. This was at a space agency. After months of research and analysis, I concluded that the only way to do this was to break space transportation into 2 steps. Let rockets do what they do best, get cargo to space. Then take advantage of more efficient methods of transportation, to get satellites to their final destination. Well, when I handed in my report, my manager shelved it and instead asked me to design a different variant of the same 75-year-old rocket. This is why Atomos is needed. To truly solve the problems of space transportation, we don't just need updated technologies. We need new ideas and pioneers. Thank you.
Amazing. Vanessa, thank you. I'm just reflecting on all the times people ask me to figure out how to get to space cheaper. That has never happened to me. Ariel, questions? Why don't you start?
Yeah, Vanessa, great presentation and illustration. I have a few kind of technical clarifying questions. So would the satellite that you're towing need to have a special kind of like docking port for you to attach to, or does it work with any satellite? And then what's the range of kind of orbitals that you can reach? And then the last question is, what's the kind of life, the service life that you're expecting? Thank you.
Okay, great questions. So for the first question, our satellites, our customers do not need to modify their satellites. We have compliant systems. Currently, our designs are compatible with about 90% of the market. We're about that small 10%, which is mostly smaller satellites. We do have a docking interface that we can use, either can be integrated by the customer, or what we're actually doing for our first mission is creating a dispenser that we attach in the launch vehicle to the bottom of the client. So no modification required, which was a pretty big requirement from our customers. Second, you asked about the range. So our first mission that's going up next year, it's optimized around telecommunications and Earth observation satellites operating in low Earth orbit. But a lot of the value that we bring is getting operators to higher orbit. So our second generation system can serve markets as high as geostationary Earth orbit and a little bit beyond. So that's at an altitude of 20,000 miles. And it can also serve the cislunar market. But one really exciting thing about our technologies is that they're really scalable. So a lot of the prior research that was done by myself and our team before Atomos was looking at human missions to Mars, really rapid missions to the asteroid belt and Jupiter. And so really scalable, and we can move into those markets as they grow. The last question was on lifetime. So our first systems do have an on-orbit lifetime of 5 years. So that allows them to serve between 10 and 50 missions with a single orbital transfer vehicle. But the second generation does have a lifetime of 10 years.
Amazing. Thank you, Vanessa. Matt, how about you? Any questions for Vanessa?
Yes. So you said the lifespan. Can you walk through the full unit economics? Like how much would they cost to build, and then what's someone going to pay you for them, and over what? On like, is it single by mission or multi-year contract, or how does that work?
So currently, most of our projected revenue is from single-use contracts, just like a launch vehicle. We do have other revenue streams that are more sustaining, such as with insurance providers and also providing observation data. So going in and inspecting satellites, they have more potential for recurring revenue. In terms of unit economics, so it really depends on the mission. So for example, this vehicle that you can see here, Quark, it can provide in-space transportation services in low Earth orbit. A single contract takes us a couple of weeks, so between 2 and 6 weeks to execute. And the revenue that would generate in that contract is single-digit millions. So it's really starting at around 1.2 million, which is very cost competitive. Our goal is to reduce the cost of services for our customers by 20 to 50%. But then this same vehicle in a different orbital regime can generate up to $12 million per mission, just moving larger client satellites. And then our second generation system can generate, in some cases, $50 million per single transfer. And we still provide the customer 40, 50% cost savings with that service. It's just so expensive to use launch vehicles today for some really niche high performance missions. So again, it varies, but having multiple revenue streams is a really big focus of the business.
Thank you, Vanessa. Amy, final question for Vanessa.
Vanessa, I know you mentioned that you are expecting to launch in 2022. Do you already have customers lined up for that mission? So when you talk about your customers now, do you have letters of intent? What sort of revenue can you project right now?
So currently for the first mission, we are in conversations with government and commercial providers, which we're still finalizing. So it's a little bit early to say yet the exact revenue from that first mission, but the revenue potential is what I mentioned before. So it's around $1.2 million per transfer, which we can accomplish over a couple of weeks.
Amazing. Thank you, Vanessa. Incredible job. Thank you to our lovely venture friends. We're going to switch to just a little bit of science, and then I think we should see how these brains work. What do you say? Okay. Before we get started, I just want to put out a little warning here. Some of the stuff we're going to learn today about how to talk to venture investors is really, really powerful. And so key things: don't lie, don't be evil, don't break stuff, and please do not start a cult. As long as we can all agree on that, I think we're going to be fine. This is a good friend of mine, Professor Jonathan Haidt. He is a professor of neuropsychology in Virginia. He's been spending the last 30 years trying to figure out how these conversations with our uncles at Thanksgiving keep going off the rails. He's trying to figure out how humans make decisions and why oftentimes the data doesn't seem to work to convince people one way or another. So really quickly, I want to do a quick test, and let's see if he's right. Now, if you look at these two lines, which line appears longer to you? Go ahead and drop it in the chat. Send something in. Just which one appears to be longer? I'm seeing people come through. The one on the left, right? It appears longer. That's great. But if we actually look at the lines, we know that they're exactly the same length. I'm sure you've seen this 100 times. They appear exactly the same. Let's look at them again. Which line appears longer? The one on the left still. So our brains are weird. What this shows us is that we have the data. We know that these lines are exactly the same length. And yet, looking at them, the line on the left continues to appear longer. Our dear professor describes this in what he calls the social intuitionist model. Something happens in our world, there is a trigger, that triggers an intuition in our brain. Then we form a judgment, and only then our rational or reasoning brain forms the words to describe that judgment. And it's actually really rare that our reasoning or rational brain can do anything to change that intuition, right? It's why we all know we should go to the gym, but probably don't as often as we should. Think of it like this. If a dog is happy, it will wag its tail, but you can't wag a tail on a dog to make it happy. Same thing is true in our brains. We experience something in the world. The professor says our intuition is like an elephant in our brain, big, massive, lumbering elephant, which forms a judgment. And then our rational brain is like that person riding on the back of the elephant. Now it's there, it knows what the elephant is doing, but it can't do a whole lot to actually influence that intuition. And so my brain, like your brain, is like an elephant with a rider on its back. And it's actually that intuitive part that drives the judgment. And our rational brain is really only there to describe what our intuition and judgment did. And this is why investor conversations and that conversation at Thanksgiving goes off the rails. Because in my brain, if I want to try to convince my Uncle Larry that he's wrong about something, what do? I give him all the data, all the stats, all the reasons why he's probably wrong. And of course, that fails. And so if we want to form memory and we want to create change in our listener, the only way to do it is to talk to somebody else's elephant. If we talk to the elephant, Then their rational rider can describe what their elephant is doing and then talk to our elephant. And suddenly we have this nice virtuous circle. So if we want to create long-term memory, if we want to change opinions, if we want to change behavior, the only way to do it is to talk to the elephant. But how do you know? Would it surprise you to know that your brain and your heart are actually connected? Now, when we fall in love, we feel it right here in our chest, right? But that's not where that feeling lives. The feeling's in our brain. When we're heartbroken, we feel that in our chest, but that didn't come from our chest. So let's go back to like 8th grade science film strips. When an investor hears a startup pitch, just like we did today, their brain is always working. Now, this crazy Dr. Paul Zak, using blood draws and drug studies and laser beams and all sorts of things, discovered an activity in your brain that actually predicts human behavior with over 80% accuracy. And as your body approaches and retreats from this state in your brain, there are signals that get sent through the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system that push and pull inside your body. And in very subtle ways, it changes the way your heart beats. Now, it's not about heart rate or heart rate variability. It's not about faster or slower, but there are little things that happen in between every heartbeat that Dr. Paul Zak figured out how to measure. Now, it was way easier to measure the heart than it was the bladder, but that's probably for a different story. Today, we can measure an investor just like we did today in their Patagonia vests with an Apple Watch, track it directly to the cloud, and hopefully blow your mind. Should we see what happened with Rillavoice? Can I get a hell yeah in the chat? All right, here we go. I'm going to come over and pop up Rillavoice, and let's see what happened. Okay. So, Sebastian, you did about 7 minutes, and then there was some QA. Remember, what we're measuring directly from somebody's brain is attention plus emotional resonance. Those two things combined predict economic action. And we track it on a scale from 0 to 100. This, if we look in the upper corner here or right over here, scored an 82. That's mind-blowing. That's incredible performance. Typically, what we see from a startup founder or a pitch these days is an average of about 55 for a conversation or a meeting like this. And so, Sebastian, you did really well. Congratulations. We're going to see some of the moments here. We'll pull them out to figure out exactly what was going on when all of our brains got deeply invested. If you notice, we see these little green dots. These little green dots are key moments, moments that are statistically proven to be remembered 2 to 4 weeks from now. So what do you say we go look at one of these dots and find out what we were talking about? I'm just going to pick one here. Let's start with this one early on in the conversation. I'm going to turn up the volume a little bit, and we'll see what Sebastian was talking about. If that starts to play. Come on, YouTube.
Of Google searches, but right now, there's no way to capture it. But what if there was a way that businesses could hear what Charles is hearing, that they could understand their customers the way he does? As you might have surmised it.
Okay, right at that moment, Sebastian's talking about what if there was a way, right? He was helping our investors imagine this new future. Let's go to this one. I think we're about to start some Q&A at this point.
Faster, cheaper, better. And the best part about all of this is that it hasn't been hard for us to find these customers. Our entire pipeline of Fortune 500 customers, which is growing every week, has found us inbound. We've never reached out to them because they have already been trying trying to do this in their stores, but it's incredibly difficult to process in-person audio with noisy speakers where multiple people are talking into the same microphone. And Rilla is the only game in town right now.
So two great moments right there, Sebastian, where you had that talk about traction and customers, right, linked really close together. But I'll tell you, there's a dip right in here. And if we were to dig in just a little bit on what was going on inside that dip, this would be an area, even in a pitch that was this good, that you might want to think about.
100 times faster at a fraction of the cost. And this massive increase in sales visibility is allowing our customer only in months to improve their sales by more than.
So you start talking about your ability to improve the enterprise sales. Our brains, our investor brains, were starting to tune out there a little bit. They didn't really believe you, right? We were all pulling back. Now, you got us back, but there are some other moments in here. Let's see what was happening in this big valley.
Who have a 30% conversion rate versus like the new reps who have like maybe like a 5% or 10% conversion rate. And that gap in opportunity, that's how much the entire organization.
Can that best salesperson, can you tie, are they consistent to the point that like you can tie?
Okay, now, Matt, I'm going to apologize.
That's my fault.
Okay. So, Sebastian, you had this thing where you were talking about those conversion rates, right? And all of us were starting to pull back again. But as soon as Matt started asking that really good question, all of us were in. We really liked listening to Matt at that point. We kind of gave up on you for a little bit, but we were all in on what Matt was asking. Okay, now, you'll notice on this left-hand edge, we have all these people who were plugged in, whose brains we were watching. I don't know which code belongs to which person. And so I'm just going to turn on a couple of people here. And let's see if we can highlight any differences. Okay. So you can see. Yeah.
Can you make your screen a little bit bigger?
Yeah.
Or sorry, just zoom in on just the immersion screen, maybe?
Just a little bit closer here. How's that? So right now I've got immersion on the aggregate at the top, and we've turned on two investors. And so we can see across this time, individually, there are deep moments where some of us started to fall off. Let's just look at this section right in here again. Let's see what's happening here.
Companies that have already launched this on the field and in their stores.
So you'll notice our investor at the bottom here has
to more
this,
than $19,000 in
this gray bar and a couple of big red dots. Can everybody still hear me all right? Okay, great. So what we're seeing is this distinction between individual people now, not just the aggregate. On the aggregate, Sebastian did really well. It's likely he's going to win a pitch competition if the audience is voted. But that's not really the goal, right? Our goal is to try to get venture investment or to find partners to work with. And so across this, we may want to talk to this person who scored a 67, again, significantly higher than the norm, rather than this person who was a 23. And that is some of the power in looking at investors' brains. Vanessa, should we take a peek at yours? All right.
Are you going to share that data with me, Scott? You should give me that.
Okay. So let's see, where am I now? Which two? Here we go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start here on the overview page, Vanessa. What you see here is that, again, way above the industry norm. you crushed it. That's really great. And you created an atmosphere of psychological safety for our investors. So the investors felt very comfortable with the pitch that you were giving. They were ready to engage. We'll jump over to the analyze view. Again, remember, immersion is that connection between attention and emotional resonance. Now, what we see here is just a little bit different. It still scores high, but we see big, tall, and wide peaks, like these guys in here, and some deeper valleys. Should we go find out what's happening in this little gray bit right now? Okay.
The space. Rockets no longer need to go all the way to the specific orbit for a specific satellite. With OTVs, rockets can launch all satellites to a single drop point, and we'll take them from there. Dive into this.
Okay. So right there at that point where we're really starting to talk about what the business is doing, it seemed like as a group, we kind of pulled back a little bit, like maybe this was too much. I don't know exactly why, but this was a little tough, right? The brains were not quite there, but they really picked up when we get to this spot. Let's take a look at what's happening from this dot to this dot.
Next year, and they'll immediately start serving customers, generating revenue and providing value. I'm excited to say that we have won multiple grants around $2 million from customers including NASA and the US Air Force. Our team of 20 experienced space.
So we're in this section right now where we're talking about the pedigree, the awards, NASA background, and all of that. We don't typically see in a presentation like this large plateaus. We often see very spiky behavior. Brains are like rubber bands. It costs us calories to engage. And so to see a big plateau like this, you had everybody leaning in. This whole section in here is one that people will talk about. Most likely, Ariel's going to go back to his partners tomorrow and talk about this NASA-backed, or this company with NASA credentials that he met at Denver Startup Week. Okay, I'm going to turn on just a couple other people here. Let's see if we can't find some distinction. Okay. All right, so right here, this one person tuned out. They are clearly, though, a buyer. Like whoever this is going to call you tomorrow about doing a deal. That is an insane score right there. Let's go see the moment they gave up on you, though. What's the bit in your pitch that they're concerned with?
That allows them to show between 10 and 50 single orbital transfer vehicle. But the second.
Thank you, Vanessa. Matt. You see what that was? People gave up as soon as I started talking. So thanks, guys. Thanks. There you go. So remember, I promised that we'd be able to see how our audience's brains responded. I do want to just jump in quick and see if we have any data that came in from the overall audience itself. We've got a handful of people who logged in here. Let's see if we can't find, yeah, overall, pretty middle of the road session, right? We did great. There are some great moments that people will remember and a few bits that turned a little red down here, maybe in the science. But overall, pretty great. Let's turn on some individuals. We'll see if we can't find some super fans. If you were doing this for marketing purposes or really trying to build a pitch for specific types of investors, you could tie demographic data to it and start to pull apart individual audiences that you're trying to talk to. All right, so we have one person who's leaning in and one person who's reading their email. Sounds pretty normal for Denver Startup Week. All right, that's what we got. I want to just wrap it up really quick to say thank you again. This was really fun. There are certain things that you need to know. What did we learn today? The first is that if you want to change minds, follow what Sebastian and Vanessa did. They spoke to our elephant first. They grabbed that emotional part of our brain and then used their data to back up the story. And then watch for those signs of neurologic frustration. Watch for those things, those moments where people tune out. Seems like don't invite me to your pitch. That's pretty clear, right? Third, the most important thing in a venture pitch like this is not that somebody's going to write you a check right now. It's about being remembered. It's about finding those moments in your pitch, those little green dots that will be remembered 2 to 4 weeks from now. So like Ariel is going back to his partners to talk about space, you'll be remembered at that next partner meeting. Like every great venture investor, we're here to help. So if there's anything we can do to help, feel free to drop us a line, info@getimmersion.com. I really enjoyed this session, and I have a couple of minutes for Q&A. I don't know if there's questions for our startup founders, for our venture investors. Happy to field some now. Arlen, I think you've got.
We have a few questions going in here, and I'm going to give people some time to add some more. But one of the questions that came in, Scott, was, is there any automated this is within Immersion, trying to get understanding of like the patterns and the analytics. Are there any automated features within Immersion to help kind of understand what the dip, spike, or plateau means, rather than having necessarily you, Scott Brown, explain it every time?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want me to do that. The power of Immersion is that there's all of the 20 years of PhDs in science that went into this are all embedded inside of this platform to automatically bubble up that insight. So it really takes away the need for fancy market researchers and consumer insights teams and gives you as a founder or a marketer the power to do neuroscience on your own.
Fantastic. Okay. And then let's see, looking through the other questions, they're coming in quickly.
I see one about how does Immersion translate to a final decision? Now, what we know is that Immersion predicts economic behavior with over 80% accuracy. And what that means is, based on the numbers we're seeing right here, where Vanessa and Sebastian were so far above the average, their likelihood of closing investment or opportunity is really, really high. We would predict that they are going to be successful in fundraising. I can't predict whether their company will be successful, but I can predict that they will do just fine over the next 12 to 18 months.
One more question, Scott, is this, we just looked, someone said we just looked at Immersion. Is this typically the speed at which you get the information back, or is this kind of a sped up, because again, CEO of Immersion's right here?
Oh, fair question. No, this is live. This is tightrope walking, right? We measured this live. Investors, maybe you can hold up your little armband or smartwatch there to the screen. We measured it real time, live, pulled this data back as it was happening. So this is exactly the speed at which you might see it in real life.
Awesome. And we've had two great questions from different startup hosts that are actually, one is in the pitch competition Wednesday night. So good luck with that. But they're wondering if they can use that to measure their own pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Just info at, happy to help. It's pretty powerful. You know, when I first met Dr. Zach 3 years ago, our little 30-minute conversation turned into 2 hours. And And he told me about this ability to predict human behavior. And I thought he was full of shit. And so the very first thing he did is he sent me a handful of these little fitness sensors and a login to this software that they had written. And I grabbed 6 venture investors and 12 startups, and we did a demo day. And I was able to measure investors and predict what would happen with those startups. And it blew my mind. Today, this is just a very small bit of what we do. The ability to know what isn't said, to predict economic behavior based on what brains actually value is kind of a superpower that can be applied by brand managers and brand leaders and call centers and learning and education, just about every opportunity that you might see where valuing or knowing what brains value is useful.
Awesome. There's still some coming in, but one quick question about how much does this cost?
That might be deeper than what we want to talk about here on this call. I'm not selling anything. Go to getimmersion.com and have a look at it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Fantastic. And then I'm trying to make sure I understand this one question about can you show common decisions or emotions on the graph? I don't know if I think that's like, do you break them down? But I'll let you interpret that, Scott.
Sure. There's 2 things embedded in that. The first is common decisions. So what we saw, that breakdown of the aggregate at the top shows the common decisioning across all of our investors today. We can see how, as a group, we were moving along with our startup founders. When it comes to emotion, that's a slightly different thing. Emotions are weird. Turns out the science around emotion is really bad. And what we do know is that emotion doesn't actually predict economic behavior. Just because you're happy or just because you're sad doesn't mean you're going to buy or not buy. Think of it like love. So I love my wife very much, but sometimes she makes me incredibly happy. Sometimes she makes me incredibly crazy. But I would do anything for her. And that's kind of what immersion is like. Immersion is measuring that valuing in your brain, not emotion, because emotion is super fun to think about, but it doesn't actually predict economic behavior. Okay, we've hit the top of the hour. Amy, Matt, Ariel, thank you so much for contributing your brain today. It was really great. And Vanessa, Sebastian, congratulations on some amazing startup pitches. We are going to be watching every step of your journey and supporting you along the way. We're very excited to welcome you here to Denver Startup Week and to see your journey as it carries on. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy. Drive safe.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.